And that opens up this meeting of Humans Anonymous. And crap, I'm sitting here again by myself. Yes, my wife is not here. Am I doing this episode alone? I think we've already gone over how that would go. So no, I won't be doing this episode alone. I will be joined today by a couple awesome dudes. One who you guys have already met, Aaron, who is a producer. Thank you, Aaron, for producing today. We appreciate you, man. Thank you for everyone who's listening, everyone who's watching, wherever you may be listening or watching. We appreciate you. Today, we got a good one. We got a real good one. Aaron, if you want to jump in here, I want to tell a little story before we get started. How are you doing today, man?
Doing good. Thank you for
Super Bowl
having me.
has come and gone. It
Yes.
is what it is. You know, we just move on. I'm a big Ohio State guy. I had a couple guys on that Niners team. We were really hoping for it, but life moves on. Life moves on.
Right.
So yeah, today we are joined by another guest in our podcast today, Mikey Doucet, and we'll kind of be getting into a little bit. Aaron, you actually introduced me to him over social media, and we were able to connect and have him on the podcast today. And so, yeah, Aaron, you've had a little bit of a whirlwind week. How you feeling today, man?
Doing good. It's staying positive, I think, is kind of the overall message that we kind of put out. And obviously, I think that's one of the things why we're having Mikey on the day. It's just staying positive through tough stuff. Have had some issues with our poor little dog. And so at least he's a trooper fighting through, and we're all kind of just trying to stay positive and take it day by day.
Yeah, definitely, man. And it sounds like, I know we talked and I didn't want to bring it up last time, but obviously Doggo's on the mend now, and so seems to be doing well. So we were glad you were able to be with us last time, even though you were dealing with some stuff. And yeah, appreciate you being on, man. I wanted to kind of talk about something that I dealt with last night at work, and it's just been on my mind, and I want to talk about it. So a lot of times at work, I'm a mechanic, and so I have a much different job than most of the people who work in the factory that I work in. A lot of the people just pack boxes or tape boxes or put, labels on shippers for 12 hours straight. I work weekend shift. It's 12-hour shift. And so obviously for a packer, it gets a lot more mundane and a little bit more difficult. And as a mechanic, trying to keep things running and keep things going, a lot of times I get frustrated just trying to what are we doing? Why are we all standing around? Why aren't we going faster? We've got deadlines. We've got things that we have to do. And I get so caught up in this and I forget that I just have to worry about what I'm doing. I don't have to worry about anybody else's motivation, anybody else's, whatever. I can be kind to people and try to motivate them in a positive way. But I don't know. It just has kind of been sitting with me. It's like at the end of the day, as long as you're doing what you're supposed to, you're doing the right thing and you're doing your job well, does it really matter what everyone else is doing? Because I get so caught up sometimes in that, just that place of why can't everybody work as hard as I'm working? But, sometimes I slack off when they're probably working harder, and so I don't know. It's just something I've been trying to take with a grain of rice and give people some more grace, because you never know what people have going on in their life. And yeah, I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, man? You ever have a situation come up like that?
Yeah, I think that's something that happens to all of us. It's realizing that not everybody is so concerned about your timeline. I think that's hard to kind of swallow and think about, even if it's people close to you. They're dealing with their own issues and their own thoughts that are kind of maybe overcoming their day. And that's why you got brushed aside differently or had any issue that kind of came along. So it's hard to remember, I'm the only one that's in control of my timeline, my feelings, my emotions. And that might be dictated by what other people are doing. But it's, if I'm understanding and aware that I'm the one in control of all of that kind of, or how I react to it, I think that's the key to all of that. Because there's been plenty of times something happens and then I'm stressed out the rest of the day.
Oh yeah,
of something like what you said, where you're like, man, I can't believe so-and-so would do this. Why didn't he think of this? It's like, well, they're on their own path and it's not the same as yours. They don't pick things up as quickly or remember to do this process. So it's hard to not get frustrated with people like that though too. So it's understanding, being self-aware, which is sometimes really hard.
Oh yeah, definitely. But it was, yeah, just something I was thinking about. And I guess like the core of it was kind of what you were talking about. Like the only things you really can control are your actions and your reactions.
Yep.
And so what more can you really do? You can't go bend somebody's arm around and make them do what, you feel like they should be doing, because, that's not how life works.
No.
So yeah, to anybody out there who's feeling that way today, who's getting frustrated with somebody else, man, just take care of yourself and it'll be all right. Definitely. All right. Well, let's get to the episode, man. Mikey Doucet is a gentleman who we'll be having on in a minute here. He's kind of bringing a voice, awareness to a topic that we all have probably either dealt with or know somebody who's dealt with, but it doesn't get talked about, a whole lot. And that's the, foster adoption, kind of coming up and being raised through that, living through that, just that perspective of coming up in a household that you were brought into rather than born into. And so without any further ado, let's bring Mikey on in. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I'm honored to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak with Aaron and yourself, and I'm just looking forward to bringing a great conversation and perspective to the table.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited to have you here, man. Like I said, I've been watching a lot about what you're doing, and we're very excited. And, like we had a gentleman on a couple weeks ago or a week ago who was just talking about something that has kind of been something that is relevant that doesn't get talked about a whole lot. And so we're glad to be able to bring you in to kind of shed some more light on the subject, because luckily, I don't say this pridefully. I say this, very, what's the word? Humbly. Sorry, brain fart. I say this very humbly, but I've been blessed to have parents who, raised me and my siblings through a lot of, them trying to figure stuff out. And so I've been very blessed to have kind of the same parents and not have to deal with a lot of that tough stuff that other kids have to, that's out of their control. And yeah, even though I was raised in a home with two parents, and I still dealt with situations through my life where, we had situations with DCFS with different family, or people having to move around due to certain situations. And so obviously all of that took, a toll on everybody, as dealing with anybody's kids takes a toll on things, as a parent now, I'm kind of realizing that a little bit more. And so, yeah, I'm just excited to be able to hear your perspective, man, and kind of learn a lot more, because like I said, I have a lot to learn when it comes to this stuff. Aaron, did you want to kind of start us off here?
Yeah, no, and I think one of the things I wanted to try to do, as I mentioned to Landon earlier, was kind of shake up the normal podcast interview process. And we'll get into kind of your upbringing and kind of get onto that in a little bit. What I wanted to kind of start with, what I think most people, the reason I wanted to have you kind of on, was you always talk with such passion and you're so eloquent in what you're trying to say in a lot of your reels and the stuff that I've seen online. And I was just curious to know, what is your current biggest passion? What is kind of moving you along right now?
Right now, it's discernment of the call and the progression. I believe I'm very faith-based on that journey right now. I'm continuously growing in my walk and learning what that is. I've been very open these past few years in this journey of healing and learning what that might be. So I'm very passionate about exploring what faith is, whether that be through reading the Bible or man, I haven't been to, and I'm open here, so I'm being honest about my faith. Like, I haven't even been to like a Bible study since I was like a kid, and been recently journeying in that path. So I'm very passionate about that. I've always, one of the things that helped me growing up as a child was sometimes going to church, and I'm kind of leaning in on that now. I'm not allowing the a lot of times I try to think about it rationally in my own way, in my own terms, and I try to think my own way through things. But I'm learning more of letting go and letting that ego not take over, because the protective aspect of going through what I went through as a child tends to oversaturate um, my ability to have more faith, if that makes sense. So that's my passion right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was raised Southern Baptist and I came up through church. And so, yeah, God has always kind of been a centerpiece, and going through recovery and addiction, obviously having a higher power is one of the, key elements to recovery. And so, being able to already have that kind of higher power to reconnect with, made it a lot easier. And so, it doesn't surprise me that as a kid, that kind of gave you some comfort dealing with, tough situations and stuff before, because I do want to kind of go back and kind of talk about, your childhood a bit. But first, I want to kind of just talk about, and this is a question that we ask a lot of people, but like currently, who is your support? Like when you're dealing with, emotions or feelings, or you just want to bounce an idea off somebody, who's your current support? Who's like your system or your fallback, who you go to in that time of need?
I've got some really good friends. Obviously, I have a wife and very blessed to be in a marriage that takes a lot of work, just like with any other marriages or life in general. I'm sure the same would be if I were a parent or had kids. So it's a continuous effort for us together to learn how to communicate with each other. So I do lean on my wife a lot, and I know that she would lean on me in times. So I'd say her. I'd say I have some great friends in the community, and I've co-created a men's group called Crew of Five, where we have fundamentals and values where we practice what five even represents. So friends, we make time to connect. We have I being integrity, so we actually commit to values. We have V being vulnerability, so we're very vulnerable with each other and sharing weaknesses, knowing that we can get better and have strengths through that. And then E is excellence, so we're always trying to improve and get better. So I have a men's group. I have my wife. I have all of the mentors you see behind me in these books. I do my best to research as much as possible and learn and lead into those that have leadership skills and have understandings through experience. And I do my best to find sages out there, or some older men, maybe even women, that have experience that can kind of coach me and guide me. But oftentimes it is very lonely in this journey, because I don't have said family. I don't have. I journeyed with my grandfather as part of my life until I learned about my true story. So at times it's very lonely, and that's where the faith comes in, where I lean in on that. I believe that's going to be a piece in my life. The other support system that I have is the own internal self-reflection. I've learned about meditation and breathing techniques, and I've been doing that for years. I've also gone to therapy and learned about childhood trauma and healing that inner child, and just learning about myself more and self-regulation. So those are things that have helped me, and they're part of my support system in this current time.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that who better to have for a support person than your wife, right?
Thank
It
you.
kind of would be a little bit backwards if that person wasn't at least a little bit of your support. So that's great that, it seems like that person is a huge part of your support. One thing I wanted to touch on. Well, first of all, I thought it was the acronym that you used was so cool. I came up through a basketball program called the Rockford Fire, and it stood for
Okay,
faith, integrity, respect, and excellence.
come on.
So I just was like kind of reflecting on that as you spoke. But like the one thing that you guys had that that our acronym didn't is the vulnerability, and like how important is that? And that's something that I've learned too, going through recovery, talking to older gentlemen, 60, 70-year-olds at AA and NA meetings or HA meetings or whatever meetings I'm going to at the time. And, talking to them about, their experiences and their hope, and kind of just getting to, learn that different perspective. And so I definitely related to a lot of what you were saying. But yeah, vulnerability. I feel like that is a really, really important one. If you don't have somebody who you can spill all the beans to, like, it's going to build up, And so I think that that's definitely a big part. Aaron, who do you think for you, who's that person for you? Who are you spilling the beans to? Is your wife like your big support too?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things I was going to mention too with going with vulnerability is ha- having a male group of friends when you are a man. I think it's, you can have kind of the different people, your mother, your wife. I think those people have the decent perspective, but I've been lucky enough to still kind of have the core of my high school buddies that we kind of went to college together. And now we've kind of moved on, but the three of us, at least within the last 2 to 3 years, are now texting about much more deeper topics, about like kind of dealing with depression and dealing with other issues that we've gone on, which I think is super key for any friendship group. Or like you mentioned before, I think having something set up that has a men's group, which has this sense of vulnerability. I've also, to anybody who's considering, I've done therapy, and I think those are always great outlets, because sometimes I've heard plenty of people say like, oh, if you're going to a therapist, you just don't have enough friends and family. And I'm like, no, I don't think it's that. It's having somebody who's almost like a third party that can kind of, oh, we lost Mikey, that can kind of view somebody from the outside and kind of give you a different perspective than those that love you and kind of, they're all invested in you. So I think that's something too, it's helpful to kind of get out what you want to say and no one's going to be offended. And I think that's kind of, you need to have those purges. And I think having that as a man, you need to be able to get some sort of an outlet, whether it's, I'm going to go rock climbing, I'm going to go for a run. I see Mikey, you doing lots of runs and stuff. I'm sure that's a big part of kind of keeping your body sound and mind sound, just kind of getting out there. I am definitely not as much of a runner as I used to be, but I know that clarity that you can get from those runs is something that I think a lot of men and people in general can benefit from, just of getting out of the house, getting away from your phone, getting away from everybody, kind of just having that time away. So I'm, as I meander through all of my thoughts, I think one of the things I wanted to ask you was, as you've gone through and whatever you can kind of bring up from the past, but I think, is there anything that you would want to wish or tell your like teenage self? I know in an ideal world, it's something that obviously we can't do, but I think there's always those thoughts of like, man, I wish I could have said this or done this. And maybe somebody who's in a similar situation can hear what you have to say and can kind of take something away, maybe help them through something that they're dealing with.
Yeah, that's a good question, Aaron. I had a thought earlier or something that I would reflect on, but I'm leaning in and saying that this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times we get wrapped up in our heads and our minds, and I think as a child, as a teenager, I didn't have the opportunity to be self-sufficient yet. And I remember that being a very important, powerful goal for me as that young one, to say, you can be better than your surroundings and your situation. So I would tell that teenager that great job. I'd tell him that he did a good job, that he overcame one of the hardest, I mean, it's all relative. This current season may be one of the hardest, but when I was that age, going through trying to understand who I was as an individual in a situation where I didn't feel like I fit in with my own family, or families that I was around, I think that inner still voice was like, you're meant to be somebody, you're meant to do something. So I want to say thank you to that young man that I once was, who kept the faith, who kept the journey, and had hard work. He never gave up. He never gave up on his hard work ethic, and I can thank him for that. So I'm thanking him.
No, that's awesome. I was just going to say, like, what tools do you think that person possessed that kind of helped you through? Obviously, you've mentioned your grandfather a few times. He obviously had a major impact on your life. Were there people or other things that you kind of saw that kind of helped you get through this time in your life? Obviously, being a teenager is a rough time period for anybody, regardless of any outside circumstances. But what tools do you think you found along the way that kind of helped you most kind of get through this time?
I think the survival instincts really, really helped. And I was in some way I manifested and channeled that as a young man uh, to my school, my work ethic in school. Even though I moved from home to home or school to school, I was able to adapt in such a situation where I could retain information at a higher rate potentially than others. And I use that as fuel to say I'm going to go to college. It doesn't matter what school system I'm in, I'm going to put in the work ethic that it takes. I'm going to study and apply myself because this may be my only out. This may be my only way to make it. So that hard work, you mentioned my grandfather. There were definitely some influences there that I'll always be grateful for. We woke up summer times and I was up around maybe 5 a.m. every morning in the summer, or when I worked with him or lived with him. And that's another story about the work on a side note. But I worked on a farm, so I would be up. And I mean, this man's in his 50s or 60s, and he's been working since he was a child himself. But he had a work ethic, and they wouldn't let me sleep in. They wouldn't let me have that little edge. So every morning I'd wake up and go feed the chickens, the goats, the peacocks, whatever they might have been, check an electric fence. I mean, it was 40 acres. So that ability to wake up even on the days that I didn't want to. Obviously, I was looking for love and affection through work ethic, but that gave me slight edges, or the slight edge, whenever it came to my schoolwork or just hard work in general. So I used that and channeled it for my schooling or my education. That allowed me to be able to go to university.
So it sounds like you've kind of always been really driven to just work hard. Did you ever find yourself, because a lot of things, that I dealt with growing up was like the whole rebellious feeling of just wanting to fight back against all of that. And obviously you had it much harder, and I would have said as a kid that you had a lot more reason to be pissed at the world. But what, did you ever find yourself getting into trouble, or wanting to set the barn on fire, or I mean, what was that kind of aspect for you? Because a lot of kids coming up through foster care, my Aunt Judy fostered over 100 kids in her lifetime, and a lot of them were very, very troubled and did a lot of very rough things because or related to them being troubled. And so what was that like for you? Did you find it hard to stick to just working hard, or did you find yourself slipping into that thought pattern?
I was always afraid that I was going to. My grandfather threatened me when I was a child about group homes or boys' homes, and that really like scared the crap out of me, right? I was scared so much that I was going to get in trouble. Obviously, it didn't last forever with my grandfather due to some of those concerns arising and the I didn't feel like I was fully accepted, I believe, and there were moments even in school where I didn't feel like I was fully accepted. So yes, there were moments where I did lash out. I did have um, maybe anger concerns or anger issues when I was a child, and I think that was all built up from trauma. And I didn't really know how to express myself, so it may have come out across as anger at times, or there were probably rebellious times whenever I was younger, maybe as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old. And as I got older, though, I realized that this was my one shot, possibly, and it didn't work out. But I was like, the only way for me to stay with said family or said person or whoever it is if I'm at my best. like I'm monitoring and mindful of my P's and Q's. Like I'm doing everything they're asking me to do and then some, because I was afraid that I was going to have all of my clothes, my stuff, whatever they might have been, maybe the 4 or 5 belongings I had on the doorstep. So
Yeah.
I was always mindful of that. I was afraid of getting in trouble. I was afraid of not having a place to live as a child. And now I'm more anarchist, I would say, in that I'm giving back in my voice and I'm not holding back anymore. And now I'm like, hey, you know what? That crap happened to me as a child. It's time for me to speak up. It's time for me to say this shouldn't happen to any other child at all. So the the man I am now is able to have that voice that I didn't have as a child in fear of not having a place to stay. I have a place to stay now. I'm self-sufficient. I provide for in myself, and obviously I have my wife, but I'm able to discern and know that I have a place to live and be able to stay by my own actions, and I'm not afraid anymore.
That's awesome. Obviously that is a very advanced place for a kid at that age to be mentally. How did you feel when, you would get moved or you did have to go somewhere different? How do you,
Thanks.
just trying to wrap my mind, like, how do you keep going? Because obviously you kept going, and where you are today proves that you did something right. And so, like, what
Thank you.
was it like? What was that feeling like for you when that's kind of stuff would happen?
Man, I'd get attached to these people. And my situation's unique in that I was placed with my grandfather through, I was only in foster care for a year. That was the situation of itself, being separated from your siblings and then
Yeah.
being placed with people that you don't know. And then like it's just a weird thing. It's such an alien experience. I don't wish it upon anyone, especially the kids now. Like I just, you're meant to be with your family. You're meant to stay with them. Essentially, that's why reunification is a thing, and sometimes that's not the best thing. But when I was placed in these homes, like even my grandfather, I don't think I allowed a distance to be there, but maybe there was subconsciously. But I tried to connect and I tried to accept them, and now I know about the 5 love languages and what that might be. But as a child, I was very emotional and very affectionate, and I loved touch or a hug or anything of that nature. And I never really got that, so I tried to channel it into work ethic, like we just discussed. But as I would go to these other homes, and they would give me some of those things, like a hug or "I love you" or something of that nature, I would gain so much trust and love. Um, One of these families, I showed up one day and my stuff was on the doorstep for I don't even know what reason. And that's why I'm telling my story now too, because I got my court records and found out. I do feel a bit betrayed. You're asking me for authenticity and vulnerability. I feel like the court system, I feel like the state of Louisiana, I feel like my grandfather, they all let me down. But as a man now, part of that path led me to be where I'm at now speaking to you. So I don't want to say so much negative about it because it's made me the man that I am today. But I do have some strong feelings towards those situations. And the best way that I can move forward is through forgiveness and grace and know that they're human beings just like me. And they do things that they may not have meant to do out of fear, out of emotions. And they were just trying to provide for themselves as well. And I just happened to be a scapegoat and happened to be the easy way out for a lot of these families.
Yeah.
Well,
And so taking that idea and that how do we move forward with that? What kind of are you, because obviously you're putting your voice out there, but what needs to be changed? What can be changed to make it better? Obviously you're always going to have people fostering children who maybe aren't as passionate as they should be. What do we do in situations where they're just kicking kids out or letting kids run away or abusing children? Kind of what's the game plan? Is there one?
That's a good question. I've been on this journey for about a year and a half now, and I'm still seeking and trying to understand. I feel like the message from former foster youths, or however you would say it, should be should be more. I think conversations like this can bring more awareness. I don't believe there are as many men that have been through foster care that are speaking the way that I'm speaking currently with authenticity and vulnerability. And I think that um, just having these conversations, you guys are opening the door. Landon and Aaron, I just want to thank you for allowing me to speak. If I could get on a platform, more so even outside of podcast, if I could get into I tried with a bill once. I never made it to committee to try to help with the situation that happened to me. I'd say just thank you for allowing this voice to happen. And there should be more children that have grown up into adults that can give back, but there should be safe spaces for us to give back through our stories. And you guys are allowing that to happen. And it's real life, real perspective that may not be told because it is typically told from the foster parents' perspective or the Department of Childhood and Family Services perspective. And there are all these stats and data and all of that. But if you can get a real person to say, this happened to me, and I want you to see it, maybe feel it and hear it, I think it has more weight, and I think that
Yeah.
it could make more of a difference. That's what I've been trying to give back with, and may help.
No, and it just kind of like clicked for me. Like there needs to be awareness first, and you guys need to have your voice first. And so what you're doing, creating, that group down in New Orleans and just trying to, bring people together and speak on this is the biggest step forward that, you can take right now, obviously until people see that there is a consistent common issue here, nothing's really going to happen. And so, yeah, no, that makes sense. That it's been kind of difficult to figure out where to go, because where do you go other than just trying to support the people who've been through it, And so it sounds like that's what you're kind of already on a journey to do. And so, yeah, it sounds like you're taking the steps in the right direction.
Thank you, Landon.
I was going to say, and men are hard to crack, to open up. I think it's tricky when we're going through tough stuff. I think a lot of us want to kind of constrict and kind of, we're fighting our battle. We don't want anybody else to kind of worry about it. And so we condense everything and kind of get shut out from the others that might want to help us or can be a positive ear to listen to. And so I think that's something that is needed in this world. And I think that's one of the reasons why I think seeing all your stuff and your voice resonated with me. It's like, yes, I think there's a lot more voices that are out there that need to be told. And I'm hoping that someone who needs to hear this hears this and can kind of go and talk to somebody or feels a little more comfortable texting their bros like, hey, oh man, I had a tough day. And then maybe one of them says, yeah, what's going on? And you can actually have a conversation, and it's stop being embarrassed and worrying about what other people are thinking. I think that's the whole reason I think I'm here, is because of my Gary V thread. It's not, it's how I discovered you. And so
Yeah, man.
it's being able to not, yes, we can be concerned about society and people around us, but in essence, we have to not care what everybody else thinks or says about us, even our own loved ones, because they have their own perceptions, and it's like, or expectations from us, from our parents, from spouses. And so that's hard. And I had one last question, since you did kind of mention it. And I moved around a lot when I was younger, and you had mentioned kind of moving around and having to adapt. And I'm wondering, one of the things I noticed was I started picking up on how people were your almost like bullcrap reader a little bit sharper as you kind of grew up as a younger child, because you kind of moved around. You had to realize what the people who were around you, what they were trying to influence you. Was that something that you kind of noticed within yourself, that you could kind of read people pretty easily or quicker than maybe others, just because of the situations and environments that you were put into?
100% agree with you, Aaron. There's mind reading capability. I almost say it's the heroic aspect of my life. The hypervigilance is something that will allow me to be better daily and learn from people. I can read people very well. I appreciate you saying that. And you're moving. I'm sure with your experience, man. I appreciate you sharing that, because moving from home to home, place to place, obviously I have to make sure that I'm making people feel comfortable rather than me feel comfortable. It's all about them feeling comfortable, right?
True.
Well, it just so happens that hypervigilance and that mind reading capability, or seeing people for who they are and having a BS meter essentially.
Mhm.
Well, because of that, it's allowed me to be in sales, and I'm in new home sales. I work for a builder and I help families with their dreams and visions and aspirations. And it's been a very phenomenal opportunity for me to advance in my life, because I mean, moving from home to home, adapting to each situation gave me an ability to read people really well, and make them feel comfortable, and be a chameleon, adapt in real time to what they're saying, and then emotionally connect too, like have that emotional intelligence in real time. It's not something that I don't know if you can train people at an advanced level to have that, or if it's just something in your nature, from nature versus nurture.
Mhm.
So thank you for that, Aaron. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. I have one last thing, even though I think I said that this last time. What is something that someone like me or anybody that's watching can kind of help this cause that you're on, whether it's talking to a friend or going to a specific website? Are there certain things that somebody who is unaware, that wants to help, that doesn't know what to do, what resources are out there for us to look into? How can we help this and kind of move this forward with you?
Just be a part of the experience with me. And it may be my experience, it may be other foster youth's experience. You can hashtag former foster youth, you can hashtag foster care, and just maybe learn from the perspective of former foster youth. I think they have a powerful message to be told, and bring a lot of light to the situation in this world. I just happen to be part of I want to call it a movement, in that we're able to give our voices back currently. But there's also legislation. So be mindful of bills that are being passed. Be mindful of where your tax dollars are going, and what your representatives, your local community affiliates are doing. What are they doing, and what are they bringing to the table? Can you give back through volunteering? Could you be a court appointed special advocate? Could you learn, or could you give back financially to a cause, or someone out there that is representing the voices of these children? And then also those that have aged out, those that are in situations at my age, just encourage us to continue our journey. There are times when I feel like I'm exhausted, I'm burned out from sharing this message, being genuine. And I know that it's something that, no matter what, it's something that I've been essentially called to do. So if I don't do it, then I feel like I'm not doing the service. So you guys encouraging me, just engaging with me, I think that can give me substantial support, and those out there that need the support too, because you never know, 5 years from now, this podcast could have been the ripple effect that could change millions of lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we both hope so.
Yeah. No, that's great. I think that you've given us a really interesting perspective on things, and a lot of stuff I haven't thought about before, and especially just like, what are we gonna do other than let's bring awareness to this? Let's, give our time, our money where we can to help, if it's something that you're passionate about. And so, yeah, I really like the message that you brought today. I have really enjoyed talking to you. You seem like a very dedicated person who's been through a lot and come out better on the other side. And not a lot of people can say that. So we definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing your message. I have one question for you, because and I know I don't even think we mentioned this. Were you born and raised in New Orleans?
No, good question. I'm actually from the Texas borderline, next to the Louisiana-Texas borderline, basically. So I'm from a little small town called DeRidder.
Okay.
I graduated with like 52 people.
Okay.
So yeah, very, very small community. happened to move over here, and the town that I live at is called Hammond, Louisiana, which is right next to New Orleans. I'd say we're about 50 minutes away, if that. So this little community that I live in is a college community that my fellow friend from college up in North Louisiana had went to, was like, dude, come move out here. And ever since I've moved out this direction, it's just, even though it's maybe 3 hours away from where I grew up and it's in the same state, it was the necessary place that I needed to grow and develop and be my own individual self and not be around those influences that could have negatively affected me for the rest of my life.
Gotcha. So how long you been in New Orleans then?
For about 15 years.
Okay. Wow. Gotcha. So you
Yeah.
spent a lot of Mardi Gras out there.
Yeah.
All right. So
Well,
that's coming up here. Let's talk about that for just a minute before we close. Give me like
sure.
a one or two really either funny or good Mardi Gras stories, whether it
All
was when
right.
you were younger or
Yeah.
recently.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. So my very first experience of Mardi Gras, I mean, obviously as a child, you grow up in Louisiana and you have Mardi Gras regardless. Fun fact, my wife she was born on Mardi Gras.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 1990. So,
And how'd you guys
giving
meet?
her. We met at the university. Actually, we met at the gym that I worked at. She was working out, and it wasn't like it was planned or anything, or I was going to ask her. She just happened to come have a conversation with me, and one thing led to another, and we started dating. So
Nice.
I'm very happy that we met. But the Mardi Gras experience. So we're talking about a kid who grew up in foster care, who barely has a driver's license, who moved out here. I'm like 19 years old, and I'm hustling, right? I'm working hard, and my friend
Wow.
that invited me to this area was like, "Hey, man, we're gonna have you valet park with us during Mardi Gras." So we're talking about like this small country kid moving to the big city and valet parking in vehicles that he's never driven at all, and in a place that he's never been. And this was before you had iPhones where you had like all the GPS on your iPhone. Like you had to do
Wow.
like you had to do like a Tom or whatever it was. So I'm like a nervous wreck, but I'm also having the time of my life, right? Because
Right.
I'm 19, I'm in New Orleans, I'm experiencing the world for the first time, and I'm driving these really cool cars or trucks. But yeah, that's my Mardi Gras experience. Obviously, Bourbon Street was part of that as a young man. But yeah, I'm grateful for those moments and learning and the
So that
music.
that is like
Yeah.
full circle. That's just you. You're the one memory that you shared of Mardi Gras was you working your butt off on Mardi Gras.
Yeah, there's all
Oh,
work, man,
that's
always.
awesome.
Awesome.
We love you, Mikey. We're so
Love
glad that
y'all
you were
too,
able to
man.
come on today. Again, we are very much in support of what you're doing. If there's anything more that we can do, we'd love to have you back on in the future if you'd like. Like I said, just love to talk to you. And we didn't really even get into too much of your past, so maybe there is room for an episode part 2, maybe, but we'll
Hey.
see. But here in closing, just want to say thank you to everybody again for listening. Go check out www.mwah.net. That is our mother company. That's the brand name. That's Moi. That's the company we are. So if you're liking the content that you're seeing, if you like what you're hearing, feel free to check out the website. We've got different videos up there, different content, and as well, there's ways to contact us if you'd like us to come speak at an event or at your school. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Thank you, gentlemen, for not letting me be alone today. That would have been a disaster. You guys have a good one.
Thank you.